Good afternoon, everybody. As promised, we are doing a live today, and it's going to be in the style of a webinar. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everybody. As promised. That's my phone, so pardon me for that. So just a couple of things before we get started. This is going to cover the N400 form and the instructions, also an overview of the process. Quick thing, I know we're all in quarantine and some of us are staying at home or working in our office alone like me and not seeing clients. So we want to remember to stay positive, and I thought I would share a positive story with you guys today. I saw two things on social media that kind of were very uplifting. The first was there are some attorneys who specialize in wills and estates, and they have offered to do free pro bono or low bono work for our frontline workers in the hospitals who need to get their wills and estates prepared. I thought that was very honorable. So thank you to those attorneys. And moreover, thank you to all the medical personnel who are working in the hospitals during this difficult time, risking their lives and being away from their family. So that's why it's really important that we continue to adhere to the CDC guidelines. Another positive story, what I think is worth sharing, is these businesses lifting each other up. I saw Seasons 52, for example, and Dr. Phillips buying 20 pizzas from Fresco Cucina Italiana in Dr. Phillips to buy lunch for their own staff. So I think it's really cool where most of the times we think these people are competitors who are uplifting each other. If you have a really feel-good story, feel free to share with us, and we will be happy to share it with everybody else. So before we get started, I just thought it would be interesting to share that. Now, if you know anybody who would like to learn more about the naturalization process, feel free to share this video with them. Also, we do have a monthly newsletter, and if you want to be added to our monthly newsletter, feel free to send us your email and you will be added, where we provide updates, cases of the month, and just interesting stories that are happening throughout our community. Okay, so here we are. We are going to cover the naturalization process. And again, I do have to go over some warnings. First of all, this is not legal advice. This is a video for educational purposes, where some of you, it's really encouraged that you do seek the advice of an attorney prior to applying. And I believe it's a must, actually. It's not a maybe. If you have any criminal history, I don't care how long ago this occurred, if the case was dismissed, if it was expunged, these things do not matter when it comes to immigration. If you have a case that was expunged, under Florida, it's supposed to technically not exist anymore, but under immigration, it still exists. So this is why it's really critical that you speak with an immigration attorney. For example, convictions are considered differently under the state of Florida than they are under federal guidelines. So what you don't want to do is make a mistake on your application. If you have any trips longer than 6 months, this may affect your eligibility. So again, probably speak with an attorney. Any medical conditions preventing you from learning. This video is not supposed to be your assistance. We do suggest that you speak to an attorney prior to filing your application. If you misrepresent, if you lie on your application, you can be denied. Not only can you be denied, but you can be prevented from applying for 5 years. One of the requirements is good moral character. So if you lied on your application or at the day of the interview, that means you have to wait 5 years until you do this. I've seen it before. If you have certain criminal history or if you misrepresented, you can then be placed in deportation proceedings. So make sure you consult with an attorney if you fall under any of these issues here before you apply. All right, so now that we got the scary stuff out of the way, I would like to talk about where do we start? So if you go to uscis.gov, this is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, where you can find the free forms. Many times there are fake or impersonating government websites out there where they charge you for the forms. The forms are completely free. So if you go to uscis.gov, you'll see it there. And after you click forms, one of the first thing that pops up is the N400 apply for citizenship. Okay. This page is the N400 homepage for USCIS. And you will see here several things, and we're going to go over these with you today. So the first one is the actual link for the form itself. Then there's the instructions, a document checklist, and then a requirements page. So there's a lot of resources out here for those individuals who do have more black and white cases. So you can see them here, and then you'll be able to kind of do some research yourself to see if you are eligible or what you need to do. So let's talk about who is eligible. On that N400 homepage, there is an eligibility worksheet. So we'll go through this together to see who is eligible for the naturalization process. First and foremost, you must be 18 years old. So if you're less than 18 years old, you cannot apply for naturalization. Second, you must be a permanent resident. So there is no jumping the line or just simply applying for citizenship. You wouldn't believe, we do get a lot of calls, people saying, I'd like to apply for citizenship. And I ask them, okay, well, when did you get your green card? And I say, well, I don't have my green card. I'm still in South Africa. Well, the first step to that is you have to become a resident before you can apply for citizenship. So the next question is, how long have you had your green card or your permanent resident card? So if you follow this checklist, it's going to really walk you through who's required, who's eligible, and who's not. So 5 years or more, you move down to the next set of questions. 3 years or more, you go to a different attachment on the next page. So the 3 years is going to be people who qualify for military expedited naturalization, or people who are applying based on marriage or some other special circumstance. So for today's video, we're going to focus on those applying based on 5 years. So let's go ahead and see question 4. During the last 5 years, have you spent more than 30 months outside the United States? Now, so we know you have to have a resident card. You must have had it for 5 years. You must be over 18. Now, do you meet the physical presence requirement? This is the 30 months they're talking about here. So if you count out all the days physically present in the United States, you will determine whether or not you meet the physical presence requirements. So if you have more than 30 months outside the United States, you do not meet the physical presence requirements. All right. Question 5. This is where it causes a lot of confusion about continuous residence. And even this question, we're just going to blame everything on Corona. I know that the pandemic has a lot of people on their phones, using their computers. Everybody's working remotely. So the connection is constantly being lost. So I'm going to get back to what we were talking about here. And on this portion of the presentation, we were talking about continuous residence. Continuous residence is broken if you have spent a trip more than 6 months outside the United States, okay? So if you have traveled outside the United States for more than 6 months, you should contact an attorney. It doesn't mean it's over, okay? There you can overcome or rebut the presumption that you've broken continuous residence if you can prove to them that it was outside of your control or there was some extraordinary circumstance that prevented you from returning home to the US. So this is why it's really important to have an attorney, because you don't want to appear at your N400 interview ill-equipped or not prepared to answer these questions, because your answers during the interview are basically sworn testimony. So you need to be sure you are ready and you anticipate what's to come. So assuming you go through this worksheet and you are eligible, the next thing is, all right, well, how do we go ahead and apply? So the instructions are also listed on the N400 homepage. So in addition to the flow chart, if you don't like that, you just want to read, you can see the eligibility requirements here. Now, you should note that the instructions alone are 18 pages and the form itself is 20 pages. So this is very detailed instructions. You may be able to find some answers that you need in there. And I just wanted you to see how much or how many resources are available to you at the USCIS website. So this also talks about the exemptions to the English test. If you are over the age of 50 and you've been a resident for at least 20 years, you can take a history or civics test in your language, for example. And then if you're over age 55 and been a resident for 15 years, you can also apply for that language exemption. Now, if you see here, number 3 says the exemption for medical requirements. Excuse me, that's not number 3. But if you notice later on N, there's a form called N648, and this is the form that a doctor must complete when one is claiming to have a medical condition that prevents them from learning. All right. So going back to the home page, you can also locate where the filing fee is exactly. So right now, the filing fee is $640 plus $85, and this is a total of $725. I always ask clients to use a cashier's check. You could even use credit card nowadays, or even money orders. Sometimes a little tip for me, I don't like to use money orders for clients because if the case gets lost, it's hard to track a money order. It's hard to stop a money order. But if you have a check, a personal check or a credit card, you can stop the payment. And this oftentimes, if you don't receive the receipts, if we check our bank statements, I can see the back of a cash check and it has the actual receipt number on there. So if you apply with a personal check, you can actually see that the receipt number, once it's cashed, is going to be on the back of your check. So that's just a tip for you there. All right, so let's get into the nuts and bolts, and we're going to go through the N400 form. Again, back to the USCIS homepage, you click on the form, and here it is. This form is 20 pages long. If you look at the upper right-hand corner, you want to make sure that you have the right valid form. There it says Form N400, and it says expires September 30th, 2022. If you started your... Hey, you all. Let me apologize. I guess I'm not sure what's going on with the internet or with the software we are using for the presentation. So I'm just going to stop using that for now and see if we can stay live a little bit longer without having any issues. So let's go ahead and get started. And what we were talking about is the form itself. So I do have it here manually for you. Okay. And on the presentation, and I can probably share that with you guys later on our website, we'll publish it. If you see here, this first and foremost is where you put your A number. Okay. And this is going to be required on every page of the form. So on your upper right-hand corner on page 2, all the way through page 20, you need to continue to list the A number as needed. So we're back and we got disconnected. For those who are joining us again, we are going to go ahead and continue without the presentation. I think that might be causing some issues with the connection. So I'm just going to go live from my phone. And we know when these issues come up, you just kind of got to roll with it, and we'll keep trying to bring you guys as much information as possible. So here we are on the page, and we have a lot of, and the first thing you're going to see is an option, and it's going to tell you which one are you qualified for. So the first option is have been a resident for 5 years. B is been a resident for 3 years, but you have been married to a U.S. citizen for 3 years and you're residing with the U.S. citizen for 3 years. Number C, or letter C, states you have employment abroad, and this is the ones that are certain exceptions to physical and continuous residency requirements. So we've done these for military personnel. We've done these for those working abroad with spouses working for U.S. commercial enterprises like Microsoft, where their whole physical presence requirement is completely waived. So you want to check your options here. This last one says other. This other here is for those sometimes who are unfortunately victims of domestic violence. They can still apply based on 3 years. And again, I do apologize, the PowerPoint went down and I think it's disrupting the line. So we'll share that with you guys later, and it goes through it step by step. So part 2 on the page 1 of the N400 asks for your full legal name. Your full legal name is your name as it appears on your birth certificate. So if your name was, Naif Mubarak, and then the translator misspelled your name on your translated birth certificate, you're going to have to legally change your name. That's why it asks for your name exactly as it appears on your green card as well. So if these two things don't match, you need to be able to either choose which name you're going to be claiming, or you can even do a free legal name change. On page 2 of the N400, at the very top, here it says other names used. This is where you should list all spelling of your names, maiden names, any nicknames that you may have had, and it also asks you if you have legally changed your name before. The next question is Social Security. That's pretty obvious. Your date of birth, the date you became a resident, your country of birth, and your country of citizenship. Now, earlier we talked about physical and mental disabilities that may prevent you from learning or completing the exam. So on this portion, you need to select if you have any conditions that would prevent you from working or learning American history or demonstrating your ability to speak English. If you want to have the test in your language and you meet the requirements of 50 years of age and a green card holder for 20 years, then go ahead and select that option. Now we'll go ahead and go to page 3. Page 3 is basically your contact information, your address, and your mailing address, okay? This says 5 years. This should be 5 years, just like it says. I don't want you to apply 4 years and 9 months of your addresses. I don't want you to put 1 month short. You need to go back 5 years to the best of your ability. Now, the other thing is, that's a really important tip. If you start to see, they give you a space for several addresses. If you lived at the same address for the last 10 years, you don't need all this space. Do me a favor. Do not leave it blank, okay? You want to go ahead, at least put an N/A for not applicable, okay? You don't want to leave anything blank. You don't want them to assume you did not answer the question. Now, part 6 of page 4, right down here, this is form N400 application for naturalization. If you're just joining us, we're providing just educational information on how to complete it. If you have any criminal history or extensive travel, anybody who is any type of gray area in their application, please consult with an attorney. But part 6 asks about information about your parents. Where do they live? Where were they born? Are they US citizens or not? This is really important because, believe it or not, some people are citizens and they don't know they are. So if your parents naturalized before your 18th birthday and you just never got a certificate of citizenship, it's very possible that you may have become a citizen anyway. So this question is for the service to determine whether or not you have obtained naturalization through your family members automatically. So that's page 4. And page 5 is still asking for information about mom and dad. And if you see here again, the A number is there. You want to make sure you're putting that every single time. And then it's going to ask for your eye color, your race. So for my Middle Eastern people there's options that say white, Asian, black, African American, Native Hawaiian, or American Indian, Alaskan Native. What do you qualify as? If you're Middle Eastern, what option do you select? So if you're original people from North Africa or the Middle East, you would select white. The census hasn't passed anything yet to give us a category for Middle Eastern or North African individuals. So right now the option is white. You want to put your height and your weight. Try to be as accurate as possible. I have some friends that are watching. They would probably say they're taller or less heavy than here, but you want to be accurate when you're giving this information. USCIS will confirm this information. So Page 6 is employment and education history. Again, this is going to be for the last 5 years again. So if you are employed or you're unemployed, you need to list the specific dates. It's really important that you keep track of your history. I mean, you can pull up your old resume or a CV, and sometimes it can help guide you there. But if you were unemployed for 4 or 5 months and there's a gap between employment, you need to put unemployed for 4 or 5 months, for example, there. All right. So this is the page 6 of the N400. It asks for your occupation. You could put student if you're studying. If you're self-employed or you own your own company, you should put self-employed and put a description as to what exactly it is that you do when you're doing the N400. All right, so we're moving right along, and we did have a nice PowerPoint, but we're gonna, I guess, do it an old-fashioned way on Facebook Live and just hold this form for you, and I will present the presentation on our website for those who want it. So page 7 of 20 on the N400 application is probably the one that creates a lot of heartburn or headache for most applicants. So part 9, question 1 states, how many total days did you spend outside the United States for the last 5 years? You should not guess how much time you spent outside the United States. This portion of the application is a make or break point. If you try to misrepresent, if you don't recall, one of the requirements, again, are physical presence requirements and continuous residence requirements. And if you see here, it's very clear. Did the trip last longer than 6 months? If it did, this is going to be a red flag. Or if, and you know, everything's electronic nowadays. When you're coming in and out of the country, USCIS can verify your dates of travel. So you want to give them, you know, candid information. You want to tell the truth, and you want to be able to know these answers. So if you're somebody who travels often, then you need to really study this portion of your application because it is required that you answer them. Funny story, when I was a law student, I was volunteering at a clinic similar to what we're doing, but it was in person. And I had the luck of having a flight attendant for the last 40 years. And the old application used to list every trip since becoming a resident. It took us probably 3 or 4 hours to list her trips. And I'm so thankful that the new application says only the last 5 years. So if you need more space, don't worry. What you can do is simply add a sheet of paper behind page 7. You would put part 9, part 3, and you would just add the trips there, okay? So then it's gonna ask about your marital history. So there's a couple of options here: single, never married, married, divorced. And it's very important that you familiarize yourself with this application. If you're doing it yourself, if your attorney is doing it for you, these are the same questions that you're going to be asked. So if you don't understand these questions, you're going to be showing the USCIS officer that you don't understand English. So be familiar with this. You don't need to get to the English exam to fail the interview. So it asks information about your spouse, your current spouse, and your former spouse. So you need to get the divorce decrees, get the dates. Even if it's your current spouse's ex-husband or spouse, you're going to need to get that information as well. If they are naturalized citizens, so page 8 continues to ask about previous spouses. Again, even if you're divorced, you'll need to get that information. Now, page 9 ends the spouse information, and then it goes to information regarding children. You should include, stepchildren, biological children, and you put the relationship in there, biological child, child through marriage, or stepchild. So if you do have more than, let's see, page 9 through 10 gives you enough room for 3 children. If God has blessed you with 4, 5, 6, 7 children, same thing as before. You add a blank page, you put part 11, you add the corresponding letter, and you list the children there that you've had, and that way USCIS knows who all your children are. So just want to point out, we don't want to leave anything blank. So if you only have 2 children, when you get to child 3, go ahead and put not applicable or NA. I don't like leaving blanks on any applications. And for example, on USCIS applications for asylum, if you've left a blank on something, they are rejecting applications. Now is not the time to mess around. Now is not the time to be lazy with your application. They can accept your application and then it can be denied, and they can even keep the money. So it's up to you to make sure that you are doing a good job. Now, I'm going to go back to my scary warnings again. Criminal history or arrest, expunges, tax issues, child support issues, extensive travel. You need to consult with an attorney. Not only can your application can be denied, some circumstances can land you in deportation proceedings. You don't want to go in there for, hoping to become an American, and the next thing you find out, you're now going to be in removal proceedings for something that you may have forgotten about, or criminal history you could have been warned about prior to applying. All right, on page 11 of 20, we have part 12. This is where all the important information starts to come to light. Answering yes or no is the equivalent of sworn testimony. When you sign this application and you submit it, it's a federal sworn statement. When you're at your interview, you raise your right hand, you take an oath, you are telling the truth. So it's your obligation to make sure you answer these questions correctly. Question 1, I'm going to go through some of the big ones, and if you have questions or if I skip over one, please let me know, is have you ever claimed to be a U.S. citizen in writing or any way? This is a very scary question, especially for those who may have accidentally registered to vote. If you were in New Jersey or New York and you wanted to renew your driver's license and it says, would you like to register to vote? You weren't paying attention and you clicked yes. This can be used against you that you've claimed to be a U.S. citizen. And under immigration law, one of the worst things you can do is claim to be a U.S. citizen. If you use the social security number of another individual, if you use the visa or passport of another individual, these are false claims to citizenships, and these are extremely significant. And now, for those who do have attorneys, even if it's not me, the worst thing you can ever do is not tell your attorney something, okay? We are here to represent you. We are here to make sure we know everything and we know how to handle any hurdles that come our way. So make sure you stay honest with your attorneys so that way they can help you and you're not placed in a worse situation. Again, we're just going through the form N400. We do have a PowerPoint that'll be up on our website later. If you think that this is information for somebody that might find it beneficial, please share it with them or give us their email and we'll be happy to send them a copy. And if you want to like our page, I would greatly appreciate that. I don't think I introduced myself. For those who don't know me, I am Naif Mubarak. I am the founder of Mubarak Law. We've been open for about 3.5 years, and I've been practicing immigration law. It'll be 10 years this year. Okay. So questions 2 and 3 are similar to the have you ever claimed to be a U.S. citizen? Have you ever registered to vote? Have you ever voted in any election? Again, these are some serious problems if that's you. Now, question 4, do you have title of nobility? Any royalty in your family? Any prince titles, princess titles? This is important for USCIS for some reason, and you would have to explain yourself or renounce some of these titles. Question 5 is, have you ever been declared legally incompetent or confined to a mental institution? All right, but on page 12, this question here, let's talk about taxes. Do you owe any federal, state, or local taxes? Have you ever not filed a federal, state, or local tax return? These questions can really sneak up on you. It can bite you and ruin your naturalization process. If you are in debt to the IRS, you are not complying, or you did not ask for a payment plan, this can be used to demonstrate that you're not a person of good moral character, right? So you need to be on a payment plan with the IRS. You need to file every tax return and show them that you're complying with it. If you do not, this can be used as evidence to demonstrate that you are not a person of good moral character. I see Miss Fatma has given us a question. I promise we'll get through those towards the end. Question 8 of page 12. Have you ever called yourself a non-U.S. resident while filing your tax returns? Now, we have people with green cards. We have those who are living abroad sometimes and working abroad, and they don't want to, pay taxes, and you're filing as a non-resident. When you're a U.S. resident, you better be living and working and residing in the United States. So you need to choose, do you want to hold on to your green card or do you want to live abroad? And this sometimes is a hard conversation we need to have with our clients. Sometimes they don't want to hear the truth. But I could always promise you, we're going to tell you like it is, and it's up to our clients to determine which route they want to take. There's a question from Miss Wiam. What if they file joint with spouse? Of course, that when you file jointly with the spouse, that counts as filing your tax returns. So be careful what your spouse is doing, because what you're doing is essentially the same thing. You guys are one legal entity. All right. Question 9. It says, have you ever been a member of any group, club, association, society, or any type of organization? When we started this presentation at 2 o'clock, I said, for those who have received their status through asylum or refugee, please consult with an attorney. Why? If you received asylum for your political activity abroad, for example, you were a member of a Democratic Party and you were protesting against another individual, and now on your application, you don't remember 20 years later and you put no. I was never a member of any groups, clubs, societies, or organizations. Well, immigration has a file, a copy of your file from 25 years ago. So they're going to start to ask you, are you lying today, or did you lie 25 years ago when you got the refugee status or the asylee status? All right? This isn't a game, folks. It's not filling out a form. This is sworn testimony. So be sure you know what you're responding, and at least consult with an attorney. If you don't want to consult with us, there's plenty of amazing attorneys in town that you should consult with. But this is not something you should take lightly. So there's some more questions. Have you ever been part of the Communist Party, terrorist organization? Have you ever advocated to overthrow any government by force or violence? Again, that question 11 might sneak in easily to those who are asylees or refugees, okay? So this is something really important that you need to be careful with how you answer these. And again, if you don't understand these complex questions, totalitarian party or persecution, the officer might ask you, what does persecution mean to you? And then you're going to say, oh, no entiendo, I don't know, مش فاهم, I don't understand, right? But then guess what? You now are telling the officer you can't even answer these questions in English. So you just memorized to keep saying no like a robot. And that's not demonstrating that you are actually competent in the English language. So take the time, familiarize yourself with these questions, because the officers can go off script. It's their right to determine whether or not you speak English competently. Now, just like you do have rights in this situation as well. You are allowed to ask the officer, can you please repeat yourself? Can you ask me another way? Is there a different way to ask me the question? Because you just need to show an understanding of the English language. You don't have to be completely fluent. So a lot of times my clients are required to demonstrate they speak English, and they get nervous, right? They speak perfect English, and then we get in front of the officer and they freeze up. I tell my clients all the time, take your time, speak slowly, answer the questions. If you don't understand it, it's absolutely your right to say, can you please ask me this question again? Okay. Question 13 asks about people who have been members of Nazi Germany. So if you were alive or in Germany or participating with Germany from 1933 to 1945, we want to know about it. Ali Jarrett here has said immigration has copies of everything, paperwork from 1987. It's true. So for all of our clients who have complicated histories, We do FOIA requests, right? We want to get a copy of their file. We want to know what that history entails, because in order to represent you, we need the full picture. We want to know everything. So when you go see a doctor, you need your medical history. When you see an immigration attorney, we need your documents. We need your history. So if we get to page 13, lots of questions here, right? So don't forget A number on top. Have you ever been a part of torture, genocided, trying to kill someone, hurting someone, not letting someone practice his or her religion? This one is very interesting too, this section. Did you ever serve in any of military unit or paramilitary unit or group? Many countries have mandatory military time that must be served. So you're going to have to put yes, you're going to have the documents, you're going to need to know and answer what type of training you completed, what was your position, what was your ranking, what did you do? Because you will be asked these questions. Part 16 asks if you ever worked in a prison or jail camp. And then 17 asks, have you ever used any weapons against any person? So again, this question might contradict if you put no, but you were part of the military. Well, the military may have used weapons against people. So you want to consult with your attorney about how is it best to explain this situation, how best to answer these questions. 18, did you ever sell weapons? Did you ever help anyone obtain weapons or sell weapons? These are all questions for national security and good moral character. So it's really important you answer these questions. All right, so we're going to jump to questions 22 through 28. This is page 14 of 20 on the N400 application for naturalization. And we are doing our Tuesday tips on the N400 process. So this portion of the application is talking about criminal history. I'm going to harp back about the beginning of our live today when I said if you have any criminal history, please, I beg you, do not file without speaking to an attorney. A lot of people have been residents 20 or 30 years. Maybe they have a DUI, maybe they have a battery, maybe it was dismissed and it's expunged. Under Florida law, people believe expunged doesn't exist. It's erased from your record, so they'll put no. That's wrong for immigration, and you've just lied or misrepresented to immigration. If you had a criminal case and you received a withhold of adjudication, a criminal defense attorney will tell you, this is not a conviction. Guess what, guys? That's not correct when it comes to immigration. So what might be a conviction or not be a conviction for Florida law or Illinois, wherever you live, can be a conviction under immigration law. So this is why we, really harp on the fact, any criminal history, any even traffic tickets, please consult with an attorney before you do that. This is a question that's pretty good. If maybe you're too dumb to become a citizen here. It says, have you ever committed a crime for which you were not arrested? So basically, are you now going to confess to doing something wrong but you were not arrested for? Have you ever been convicted of a crime? If you have a withhold of adjudication, then that's going to be considered a conviction. And then ask you for suspended sentences, probation, diversion programs. I would always err on the side of caution. If you were in a diversion program, if you had a suspended sentence, you're going to want to put yes here. If you were in jail for a couple hours, I'm probably going to put one day of jail. And then there's a chart on the bottom. It's going to say, list your arrest, the charge, and what was the disposition. Okay? This is why people with criminal history should consult with an attorney before they file. You're going to need certified copies of the records. You don't have the records, you can't get the records. There are things attorneys can do to help you. So if you don't have any of that, you're good to go. Keep completing your N400 form. So if we get to page 15, here we have more questions. Have you ever been a habitual drunkard? Have you ever been married to more than one person at the same time? Have you ever failed to support your dependents or to pay alimony? Earlier, we were talking about taxes and not being on the taxes, right? Or showing them your divorce decrees. If you fail to support your dependents, if you're not paying your child supports, then you're not a person of good moral character. They can deny you on this claim. So you need to make sure you are current on your obligations and take care of your kids. It's the right things to do. But you need to make sure that you have this evidence to prove. Even if a lot of times we have clients that they pay their spouse cash. There's no documentation to prove that they're paying their child support. Please do not do this. Write a check, Western Union, keep track, because how do you prove something that doesn't exist? If you don't have a paper trail, they're going to say, we don't know if you're actually paying your child support and alimony. And we don't know if the mother or father of your child is going to write a statement saying that you do pay your child support or alimony. So for those situations, just like your tax payment plans, you want to keep a paper trail. So question 31 says, have you ever given any U.S. government that was false, misleading information? If you ever came here on a fake visa or passport and this was forgiven of you in the deportation case, or you applied for a waiver, for example, this should still be yes, right? Because even though you were forgiven for it, it doesn't mean that it never happened. So again, for those people with long, complicated histories, it's always in your best interest to seek the advice or counsel of an attorney. Some more questions of, have you ever been deported? Have you ever been removed? Have you ever been placed in deportation or removal proceedings? Not everybody's an immigration attorney or scholar, so even if you were deported at one point in time 25 years ago, the case was reopened, the deportation order went away, that's still going to be yes. Sometimes you're deported as a minor because your parents filed an asylum application. This should still be yes because you had a deportation under your name. So those people, complicated histories, please see an attorney. Otherwise, if these are simple no's, then keep moving, okay? Have you ever served in the U.S. Armed Forces? Have you ever been court-martialed? There's some U.S. military questions. Okay, page 16 of 20, part 12. This is really important. Selective service. If you are a male who lived in the United States between your 18th and 26th birthday, absent those who are here like on student visas, you should have registered for selective service. This is even true for people who are undocumented. And if you see here, it says lawful non-immigrant status. So if you fell out of status, it can be argued that you should have registered for selective service. So selective service, you can actually get proof that you've registered for that. So please be sure that you're able to answer this question. If you have not registered, you didn't know about it, an attorney can help you write an affidavit and demonstrate why this was unintentional, and see if USCIS accepts that letter. Now, finally, the good part, right? 45 to 50, page 16. Do you support the Constitution and form of government of the United States? This better be a yes, a very strong yes, right? Why do you want to become a citizen of our great country if you are not willing to support the Constitution of the U.S. government? Now, as I mentioned, sometimes our clients memorize the applications, they're nervous, their English is not their first language, they learned it at 50 plus years old, so they memorize the application. So they want to just get in there, they want to say no, Constitution, yes, and they are barely breathing when they go through the interview. But if you have an officer, the officer has the right to start with this question. And if you're nervous enough, and the first question is, do you support the Constitution of the form of government? You say no, because you're so ready to answer, you're like ready to start. This can create a little bit of a headache for you. And sometimes it's really just the officer wanting to see if you're paying attention and if you understand the questions. So again, you're going to your interview. Remember, take your time, take a deep breath. Ask them to repeat themselves. It's not a speed test. It doesn't matter how fast you answer these questions. You need to show that you understand these questions and you're answering them correctly. So please take your time. Do you understand the full oath of allegiance? So I've seen it before. They ask you, what does the oath of allegiance mean to you? clients just start to blink. Oath of allegiance. Well, oath of allegiance means you're going to be loyal to the United States. So make sure, again, I'll keep repeating it all day, you review this application carefully. So you will sign on page 17. Here is all the language certifying everything that you're saying is truthful, correct. This is a legal document, it's a sworn statement, basically showing that what you can really be in trouble if you misrepresent anything. If you do have an interpreter, you're going to probably have to explain that you either meet the age requirements that allow you to have an interpreter, or that you learned English while the application was pending. Page 17 and 18 is for the interpreter and your attorney if you have one. And then 19, part 16, do not sign this. This is for your signature at the interview. The officer will go through the application and make any changes, which is important. Changes, right? Excuse me. When you file the application, it might be 9 or 10 months before you have your interview. A lot can happen in that time. You can change jobs, you can travel, your marital status can change, you can have a baby. So don't worry if your application has changed from the day you filed to the day of the interview. Just be ready to provide them with the answers with the most current up-to-date information. You can also even take an up-to-date application with you. Some officers prefer just to make the changes manually. All right, so on page 20 is how your name is going to be on the, if you're renouncing any foreign titles. Remember, we talked about princes and princesses, you have to renounce your title. And then the oath of allegiance on the bottom of page 20 that you will take the day of your oath ceremony if you are lucky enough to pass and be granted the blessing of becoming a U.S. citizen. Now, that's the application, right? It's 20 pages. There could be a lot of minefields for some of you. Complicated histories, marriage issues, criminal history, application, long immigration histories. Please see an attorney. So what happens when you're ready to file? You've completed the form, you've double checked it. What I suggest is you check the instructions, the 18 pages there on the USCIS homepage with the N400 form. It tells you where to file. So you want to, every state and based on your location, files to a different USCIS lockbox. Okay, so you want to double check. Sometimes there's an address for FedEx. Sometimes there's an address for USCIS. So USPS. So make sure you are using the correct address when you are mailing your package. Now, before you mail your application, you need to make a copy of everything. You need to make a copy of your check and your money order. You need to send this baby with tracking, all right? The only way to prove that this has made it to USCIS is if you have tracking. If you send it in a postal service that doesn't have any tracking, you're sending all sorts of personal information, your application, your money order, your check, and there's nowhere to track if it made it there or not. So if you want to know, oh, it's been 2 weeks before since I've heard anything, when do I get my receipts? I said, well, how do you know it was delivered? That's the great unknown, right? So make sure you keep a copy, make sure it's tracking, and make sure you check the evidence list that's required, because you need to submit evidence under certain circumstances, all right? So you've made a copy, you've made tracking, you've put it in the mail. Now what? Well, typically 2 to 4 weeks after the package is received by USCIS, you will receive a 797 notice of action from USCIS receipt notice telling you the receive date, the notice date, your name, and which application is in progress, and that's going to have your receipt number. USCIS now has an app where you can check status of your case. You can input your receipt number and constantly get updates. About a month or so after you receive the receipt, you'll receive the fingerprints, and it can be several months you're just waiting. And then after that, you will have your interview. At the interview, the officer will go through this entire examination, and also, but for those people with those exceptions, is going to give you the English test where you have to read, write, and speak. and then also the history test where you have to answer the questions. So make sure you're studying after you get your fingerprint appointment. That's what they're going to use to run your background check. You'll get a book with the CD or a booklet to start studying those 100 questions to make sure you're ready for the citizenship. When you go to your test, if you pass, you'll wait for your oath ceremony, and that's typically the process for the N400 period. Now, if you get arrested during that time, God forbid, or you travel or something urgent happens, you need to, again, consult with an attorney. Once you become a citizen, it comes with all sorts of benefits like voting. This is an election year. I can't harp on that enough. You can also petition for your parents. You can petition for your siblings or married children, similar to bringing a spouse over here or then bringing parents from your home country. So there's a lot of benefits that come with U.S. citizenship. It is the finish line for a lot of immigrants' story, and I'm always so happy and honored to be a part of that. I hope that you guys found this information helpful. I apologize about the hiccups in the beginning. We were trying to do a fancy presentation with you guys. We had a PowerPoint, so we'll put that PowerPoint on the website, but I guess it was creating connection issues. If you found this information helpful, please like our page and share it. And if you have any friends or family that want to learn more, please give us a contact. We are working in a virtual capacity right now. We're doing consultations by phone or Skype at mubaraklaw.com. Please follow us on social media, and thank you guys for joining me today. Let me just see if there's any questions that I missed here. So somebody asked, if somebody's going back to tax, what if a green card holder is working out of state and not working in the USA? Well, this is problematic, right? You're supposed to be living in the United States. How are you working outside? So this is something that complicates your case, and I would recommend that you do speak to an attorney. See if there's anything else. There is, can a person older than 65 who spends 1 to 2 months in the USA and 6 months apply for citizenship? So again, this question comes to the time. Do they have the 30 months inside the United States? If they have the 30 months in the last 5 years, then yes, they can apply, and as long as there's no trips longer than 6 months. There's 2 requirements: continuous residency, so just for them coming back every 6 months is one of those requirements, which is good, keep doing that, but you still need the 30 months of the 5 years when you apply. If you have any other questions, we do have an inquiry on our website, or you can just leave the comments below. And thanks for joining, guys. Stay safe, stay healthy, and let us know if we can do anything for you. Have a good day.